Hello sports fans, this is Steven here for JustMyPicks.com, and I'm bringing you a special NFL breakdown of the top 10 greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. We have a lot to jump into, and I'm going to preference this video of saying these are the top 10 quarterbacks in my opinion. If you don't like them, you can make your own list. You can make a reply video, or you can comment under the link below. But I'm going to preference this by saying quarterbacks don't win games. Teams win games. And the quarterback has the biggest say-so in how a team wins or how a team loses, because quite simply they possess the ball most of the game. The quarterback touches the ball almost every offensive possession that the team has, so they play a major role and a major impact in what a team does. We're going to start this list off at number 10. Coming down at number 10, we're going to start Troy Aikman. Troy Aikman was essential to the Dallas Cowboys' success. Coming out of Oklahoma, he had a big arm. UCLA also had a cannon for an arm. He was a very smart quarterback. He was one of the most solid quarterbacks of the 1990s. He won 3 Super Bowls in that era. As we know, he was a part of the 3-ring circus, as the Dallas Cowboys are known, with Jerry Jones, Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith, that fantastic offensive line. The Dallas Cowboys were the Dallas Cowboys in part because of Aikman. I know you had Jimmy Johnson throughout his career, and he was essential in helping Aikman and pushing Aikman to the limit. But Aikman did a lot of solid things as a quarterback. He was thrown into the starting lineup as a rookie basically and struggled early on, but you saw as his career progressed and he got better with time and playing in that tough NFC East, you saw a lot of the Super Bowl caliber things that he could do, and he ended up winning 3 Super Bowls with the big 3 out there in Dallas. So to me, Troy Aikman's right where he belongs on this list. He was a very, very solid quarterback. He led the Cowboys throughout, I would say, a pretty successful dynasty run with the Dallas Cowboys. So for me, he's right where he belongs at number 10. We're going to move on to number 9. Number 9, Brett Favre. I cannot say too much negative things about Brett Favre, but I will say this. You don't have to like what Brett Favre does off the field or care for him as a person, but as a football player, as a Green Bay Packer, as a Minnesota Viking. I know he didn't do a lot of great things in New York as a Jet, but we saw him win a Super Bowl. It's hard to go against what he did in that 1995-1996 tear of a season where he was going and throwing the ball, spinning it, had everybody fearing on defense of his play. He won 3 consecutive MVP awards. You know, you can't really take away what he's done. Everybody knows, of course, the Iron Man streak, the Cal Ripken streak of playing the most consecutive games without missing a game in the NFL. That was snapped his last year. But Brett Favre is a solid quarterback. I know he didn't start out great in Atlanta, but when you see his body of work, when you see what he's done for the Packers and the way he helped resurge the Minnesota Vikings, I know that they didn't win a Super Bowl, but that playoff team that they had, that they lost to the Saints in basically the conference championship game, they were a solid group, and he not only gave them energy, he gave them life. We've seen Brett Favre go through, will he retire, won't he retire, that kind of thing. I'm focusing only on the field. And Brett Favre has shown me not only over time, but throughout his whole career that he's been solid. And he's been one of the best quarterbacks of all time. I know he has the lead for the league for interceptions of all time, but you have to look at it. Look how long he's actually played. What quarterback you know would actually be able to survive the broken thumb, the broken pinky, the death in the family of his family members? You know, it's so many things that Favre has done great for the game of football. I know he's been known as a gunslinger. I know that he took a lot of punishment, but Brett Favre is respected by a lot of old and new players in the NFL, and he's right where he belongs at number 9 on this list. Coming right along to number 8, Otto Graham. I know a lot of you might not have done your research or know who Otto Graham is. Otto Graham was the first quarterback pretty much to be all he does is win. And he produced so much for the Cleveland Browns in their early All-American football days, where he came and he won 4 straight titles in the 40s. You know, it was before the quarterback became the essential figurehead of the team, and they may have had a run-first team, but he held his own. He led them to a championship game in each of his 10 seasons. You know, so winning 7 of the 10 championships. So it's to me, it's like, I know it was an early period for the quarterback, but all he did was win. He was 52-4-3 overall. So, you know, he did that all while being the MVP. Basically, he led his team. He made a lot of people mad. But he pretty much was a solid quarterback, you know, and a lot of people say, oh, well, he didn't throw for 40,000 yards or he didn't do this. No, but he won championships. He helped his team win. He did what he needed to do in order to be better and help his teammates get better. Those are things that quarterbacks do. A lot of people, they have to realize that a quarterback not only does he get on this list by winning games, but how did you make your teammates better? How did you make your franchise better? Did you bring value to the franchise? Did you do a great job of helping develop offensive weapons on your team? He did it without a lot of weapons on his team, you know, so I have to give props where props are due. Otto Graham comes in on this list at number 8. Coming in at number 7, Terry Bradshaw. A lot of people say that the Steelers defense won all those 4 championships in Pittsburgh, but you have to realize he raised his game when it was time to play in the Super Bowl. On the biggest game there was, Pittsburgh Nation stood up, and I know he had an erratic arm during the regular season, but Terry Bradshaw, he came in and he did what he had to do and won the big game. Much respect goes to Terry Bradshaw. He became the first quarterback to win 3, then 4 championships. So he blazed a trail that hadn't been seen before. A lot of people talk about his fried hair and how he was just the poster child for laziness, a lot of those things. But you can say what you want. 4 Super Bowls, undefeated in those Super Bowl stretches. You can give the credit to the defense all you want, but as a starting quarterback, Terry Bradshaw delivered on the biggest stage. Just looking at some of his stats, his quarterback rating went from 83 in the regular season and when he got to the playoffs, it went to a 111.2. You know, so in the Super Bowl games, you wonder why he had the success he did, because when you're a primetime player, when you have that big man on campus inside of you, it shows during big games. He did not hide, he did not run, he did not try to put the game in other people's hands. He tried to get the job done himself, you know, and that's one of the big things and one of the big keys why he's on this list. He's very solid as a quarterback, you know, and with 4 rings, you can't really go against that. I know a lot of people want to argue that, but he's on the list. Coming in at number 6, Peyton Manning. It's hard for me because Peyton Manning should be higher on this list, but his playoff, when he gets in the playoffs, he tends to choke sometimes. And we've seen him go up against Tom Brady time after time after time and not really be successful. I know he had that one big win where they won that Super Bowl, against the Chicago Bears. But overall, during the regular season, he's one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen. He has his own language. We've seen him in Indianapolis and in Denver. The biggest thing for me was he actually boosted himself on this list from about 8 or 7 to this spot right here at 6, because in Denver, we've seen him take a brand new team that he was on and make them a playoff team. You know, they was a playoff team when Tim Tebow was there, but their offense was more efficient. Bebe Thomas, Demaryius Thomas out there. Now you add Wes Welker to the mix. You had Eric Decker. If Willis McGahee would have stayed healthy, I think they potentially could have won a Super Bowl last season instead of the Ravens winning. Peyton Manning makes every team he's been on better. You go back to his days in Indianapolis. The Indianapolis Colts are in that brand new stadium because of Peyton Manning. They won their Super Bowl in Indianapolis because of Peyton Manning. He made Marvin Harrison better. He made Marshall Faulk better. He made Edgerrin James better. He made a lot of players around him better. And you know, some people say that if Indianapolis still would have had him, they would have had a hell of a combination moving forward. And I agree with that. I don't think the coach should have cut him. I think that you're seeing Peyton Manning has a lot of juice still left in the tank and a lot to give. I think that at number 6, he fits right in because of his playoff struggles. But during the regular season, he is a machine. He reads defenses well. He scares teams to death. And you can't really get a lot of hands on him. because he's so efficient, and he's a student of the game. He studies film. He's always in there, first guy in, last guy out, and he's doing his thing. That's Peyton Manning for you. Coming in at number 6. Coming in at number 5, Tom Brady. Tom Brady has slid down this list very far. You know, I was potentially thinking Tom Brady number 3, number 2, potentially, depending on how the dominoes fall. But Tom Brady has not won a Super Bowl since his first set of Super Bowls. I know he's been back a couple of times and lost versus the New York Giants, but it's just one of those things where Tom Brady, no matter how many players you take away from him, he always seems to make new people. I know when Deion Branch and Troy Brown was there, you got the sense that, oh, can Tom Brady do it again? And when he got Randy Moss and Wes Welker, we saw him go nuts. We saw him turn into the video game, the Madden offense, and really just light the scoreboard up. We've seen him take no-name players. Now he has Danny Amendola to work with, but we've seen him take no-name players and make them into household names. We've seen him take offensive nobodies and make them into potentially MVPs. You know, Deion Branch wasn't always the best, you know, until Tom Brady got in that system. A lot of people say he wasn't drafted on whatever spot. He used the best of what he had. Coming out of Michigan, he may not have been the strongest, the fastest, the strongest arm, anything like that. But Bill Belichick in his system has made Tom Brady into a great quarterback. Tom Brady has a lot of talent. A lot of people question him lately about his greatness, but you can only blame it so much on Tom Brady because he can't throw the ball and block. But I will say those 2 Super Bowl losses on his resume back to back, you can't really have him higher on this list because of who's in front of him. But Tom Brady fits right in. I think that they'll have an amazing season. If they can ever get Gronkowski 100% healthy and Aaron Hernandez healthy, I think that they will make another Super Bowl run this year or even next year because, let's face it, the sky's the limit when you have Tom Brady. I think me or you could possibly be successful in the offense if we was on his team. So I'm looking at that, and Tom Brady fits right in on our list at number 5. Coming in at number 4, John Elway. Still the only quarterback in NFL history to throw for over 40,000 yards plus rush for 3,000 yards. He won the last 2 Super Bowls of his career, but lost the first, 3 of them. So we've seen him go through heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak and finally breaking through. I know early in his career, a lot of people, it rubbed them the wrong way when he refused to play for a team, and the Broncos pretty much cashed in and had a legendary quarterback in their lap. So these are some of the things which makes John Elway such a great quarterback. I think John Elway, him landing Peyton Manning says a lot. As good as he was on the field, he's good as just like that, and it seems like business-wise he's the same way. You know, John Elway changed the game. He was the face of the Denver Broncos for over a decade. We've seen him battle through injuries. We've seen him battle through tough games, and we've just seen him grow as a quarterback throughout his whole career. And even with that said, I don't see any tougher. He was the first really tough quarterback. I know Ben Roethlisberger was a tough quarterback, and he takes hits in the pocket. John Elway was taking hits and kept running. He kept scoring touchdowns. He kept failing. He kept doing it until he got better. So that's why he's number 4 on this list. I think that winning those 2 back-to-back Super Bowls really shows how great he was of a quarterback. Coming in at number 3, Johnny U, Mr. Legendary, Mr. Clutch. I can't say enough about this guy. He played in one of the greatest games of all time. He went ahead and punched in the touchdown. You know, he is the original Colt. You know, a lot of people talk about faces of the NFL or faces of a franchise. I believe he was the first ever quarterback and player, for that matter, to be the face of the NFL and the face of the franchise. You know, he's done so many great things, and much respect goes to him and out to his family. A lot of people really underestimated him. He was one of the first quarterbacks. Matter of fact, I'm going to put this on the record. He invented the 2-minute offense in the NFL, the last 2-minute offense. So he was the first quarterback to throw 30 touchdowns and surpass 40,000 yards. That's a lot coming in a day and age where they didn't really throw the ball a lot back then. Back then, they had on the helmets, they strapped them up, they just ran forward. You know, and their offense basically was dink and dunk. You know, so he opened the game. He really opened that spread offense up and really gave them different ideas, different looks. And because he was such a great quarterback, he could beat you with his legs. He could beat you with his arm. He was durable. And really, his name says it all. Mr. Clutch, Johnny Football, you know, Mr. Johnny Unitas. That's what he'll be known as, and he'll probably go down as, if not better than Peyton Manning, right up under Peyton Manning, as one of the top 2 quarterbacks to ever play in that franchise. I don't know if Andrew Luck will ever be able to surpass them, but Johnny Unitas comes up at number 3 on this list, coming in at number 2. This was very interesting and very hard for me to fluctuate the top 2 quarterbacks, but it came down to this. Joe Montana at number 2. Joe Montana was one of the greatest quarterbacks I've ever seen play in football, period. The Walsh offense in San Francisco set up for so many great things. Having John Taylor on your team, having Jerry Rice, having that Hall of Fame defense, having players like Ronnie Lott around you, you know, that pedigree, that great atmosphere for winning Super Bowls. It was all like one of those things where everything's happening and clicking all at the same time. Where the 49ers were budding, they had an owner who wanted to win. They had an owner who wanted to put the great players around him and really get him a lot of talent around him, and they did it. You know, and he possibly could have won another Super Bowl hadn't they had Steve Young behind him. So I just look at, he did a lot of great things. And even when he was a Kansas City Chief, he still was balling. You know, he went undefeated in Super Bowls. He showed us how a quarterback could really command attention. You know, he was coming out of Notre Dame, wasn't really said to be the best quarterback there was, but he showed it on game day, on Super Bowl Sunday. We've seen NFC Championship after NFC Championship where he really did great. We saw that amazing victory against the Bengals, and we've just seen so many great performances from Joe Montana. Coming in at number 2, he's earned his spot. A lot of people argue he's number 1, number 2 is too close to call, but coming in at number 1, my top 10 quarterbacks of all time, coming in at number 1, Dan Marino. I'm going to preface this by saying this. Dan Marino was probably the best pure passer I've seen in all of my life. You know, going back to the 40s, to the 50s, to the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even now. Dan Marino did things with a football that a lot of people cannot do. He fit the ball in places and got the ball in spots where people have never gotten the ball. And I think what hurt him a lot is the Miami Dolphins neglecting their team as far as the running game goes. If Dan Marino had a top-tier receiver on his team, if Dan Marino had a top-tier running back on his team, who knows how many Super Bowls he could have won. Yes, he got the 1 Super Bowl and didn't win that Super Bowl. Okay, I get it about the whole argument about rings and not having rings, but Dan Marino was the first true big pure passer. You know, coming out of Pittsburgh, a lot of people thought that he would go to other teams on draft day. I know it's well documented, but he did a lot of great things for the Miami Dolphins. He carried that franchise on his back. When they didn't have a great defense, when they didn't have a great offense, Dan Marino took no-name wide receivers and got them to Pro Bowls. Yes, he got them to Pro Bowls, but he never had a true number one receiver. He really didn't even have a number 2 receiver. He had a couple of number 3s that played well, and that late in the season, in a lot of those late in the games, in a lot of those seasons, they would get a lot of passing yards because they would just fling the ball around. You didn't have a threat of running the ball against the Dolphins. You never put 8 in the box saying, okay, the Dolphins are going to try to run the ball on us today. No, Dan Marino was one of those guys that wherever it was, he was trying to, wherever you was on the field, even if you had 2 guys on you, he was going to fit the ball in on you. And when, let's face it, when he retired, he left with the best stats in the game. So I know a lot of his records have been broken, but a lot of his records still stand today. So Dan Marino comes in at number 1, and like I said, he didn't have anybody to work with. Imagine if Dan Marino had somebody like a Calvin Johnson. Imagine if he had somebody like a Jerry Rice. Imagine if he had somebody like an Andre Johnson. Just somebody besides the no-name guys. You know, if he had a guy that stood out and really balled out and really played out, he would have had at least 4, 5, even 6 more thousand yards on passing. So I'm putting it down. That's my top 10 list of the top 10 quarterbacks of all time. Tell me what you think in the comments. Tell me what you think. Like my statuses. Share my videos. Check me out at justmypicks.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at justmypicks.tv. You can also check me out on this video and all my others. Check out my archive on YouTube /justmypicks.tv. Thank you very much for subscribing, and please comment.